All right, y'all, welcome to the Scott Horton Show. I'm the director of the Libertarian Institute, editorial director of antiwar.com, author of the book Fool's Errand, Time to End the War in Afghanistan, and the brand new Enough Already, Time to End the War on Terrorism. And I've recorded more than 5,500 interviews since 2003, almost all on foreign policy, and all available for you at scotthorton.org. You can sign up for the podcast feed there, and the full interview archive is also available at youtube.com/Scott Horton Show. Hey, look, you guys, on the line, we got Tim Shorrock. And he wrote a book a long time ago called Spies for Hire, and he writes a bunch of great stuff about Korea, which he knows a hell of a lot about. Welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm okay, thank you.
Very happy to have you here. You know, I've been really slacking off on the show for the last year, trying to get the book done and all this stuff. So now I'm trying to get back in the swing of things, and I'm way behind on Korea. I know that there was all kinds of shenanigans. Why characterize them? I don't know. I read this morning that the ex-president is out of jail, so there's some news. But can you tell us who's who and who overthrew what and why he declared martial law and what happened then and which guys are wearing the black hats and the white hats according to your point of view and what have you like that?
Okay, that's a lot of questions there, Scott, as usual, but I'll try to get to them. Well, black hat is definitely Yoon Suk-yeol, who just got the court let him get out of jail. He declared martial law to everyone's shock in Korea. I mean, it was just nobody expected this. And on December 3rd, he declared martial law and sent about 1,500 special forces and other military forces, well armed, to the National Assembly to take over the National Assembly and prevent anything from taking place in the Parliament. And he said that he did this to eradicate the shameless pro-North Korea anti-state forces who threatened his agenda, which is basically to break the power of Korean unions, deepen strategic ties with Japan, and continue its militaristic stance on North Korea. But a lot of people, he was very unpopular for a lot of reasons. And one is that he's seen as a pro-Japanese politician. In 2023, he had agreed to this three-way military alliance between the U.S., Japan, and South Korea, and to get that agreement going, he agreed, to settle Korean differences with Japan over World War II crimes committed by Japan, right? And in that agreement, which revolved around the so-called comfort women, women who were forced into sexual slavery, and also, people who were forced into labor in Japanese factories during World War II. That's always been a big issue for Koreans. And the way he settled it was Japan did not have to pay any reparations. Japan did not have to even apologize. Instead, all the costs would be borne by South Korea. And that infuriated a lot of Koreans. They just saw it as a sellout to Japan. And he was already, quite unpopular because of his, he has this, he just is always on the attack. In normal times, there's a lot of, in the Parliament and the National Assembly, there's lots of, fierce rhetoric on both sides. But he really attacked his opponents, who are basically, left liberals, not leftists, not communist in any way. He attacked them as pro-North Korean communist all the time. And it was just, these kind of attacks from, that used to happen, during the dark days of the Cold War. And he was also seen as very corrupt. His wife has been involved in a number of scandals. And so he wasn't very popular, and his popularity was falling, and his agenda was being attacked in the National Assembly, and he was being criticized very heavily in the media even. And so he tried to declare martial law for the first time in 45 years. And I think to his shock, uh, tens of thousands of Korean citizens, just alerted by social media, uh, went down to the National Assembly and basically, tried to prevent the military from taking control of the National Assembly, and they did. I mean, there was this one picture that went around the world of this woman legislator grabbing the M16 of this one guy and just trying to pull the gun away from him. So they really put their bodies on the line, and they managed to help a lot of the politicians get back into the National Assembly by helping them climb over the fences and stuff like that. This is both opposition and ruling party politicians, and they came back and they voted about 6 hours later to declare martial law illegal, and so the martial law decree was rescinded, and then that really began this 3-month period of political tumult, basically, because then the opposition wanted to impeach him, which they did. But it was at first the ruling party, Yoon's ruling party, didn't want the impeachment to go forward, and they blocked it. And then finally, a few of the ruling party politicians, joined with the opposition, and they did impeach him. And then he was arrested for treason, for declaring this martial law illegally, and he was, his supporters came to try to prevent that from happening, but they failed, and he was jailed. And then this trial's been going on in the Constitutional Court, and probably maybe about 10 days from now or so, 2 weeks maybe, the decision is going to come down from the court, which is likely to throw him out of office. He's already been impeached, and this will basically back up the impeachment and then declare him, that he can't be president anymore, and then elections will be called right away once that happens. So I expect that there will be an election in South Korea soon, and it's very likely that the opposition party will win, and the U.S. national security forces are not very happy with that, because they think they're not, the opposition party in South Korea is not tough enough on either North Korea or China. And they, and so like the right wing in South Korea, says the opposition is, pro-China, pro-North Korea. There's no truth to that whatsoever, but they do want to have different relation with China, and different relations. You remember in the past when Trump was president, and in the first his first administration, there was a near war with North Korea, right? And then Moon Jae-in, who was the progressive president of South Korea, did this opening to North Korea during the Olympics in 2018, and they began this dialogue that led to some important agreements between them to build, to try to defuse tensions and so on. And as a result of that negotiation, Trump began to negotiate with Kim Jong-un also to the shock of the U.S. national security establishment. But that's the background and to this political crisis that grips South Korea right now.
Hang on just 1 second for me here. You guys, I'm so proud to announce the publication of the Libertarian Institute's 14th book. It's Israel, winner of the 2003 Iraq Oil War, Undue Influence, Deceptions, and the Neocon Energy Agenda by Gary Vogler, former senior oil consultant and deputy senior oil advisor for U.S. forces during Iraq War II. Remember how I wrote in Enough Already about how Ahmed Chalabi sold the neoconservatives on a plan to rebuild the old British oil pipeline from Mosul and Kirkuk, Iraq to Haifa, Israel, if they would only get the United States to overthrow Saddam Hussein for him? And how they bought it because they are as dumb as they are corrupt? Well, Gary was there. As senior civilian consultant to the DoD and Iraqi oil ministry, he had a unique window and experience witnessing the Pentagon neocons and their machinations on behalf of Israel before and during that war. And it turns out that even though they did not get their pipeline, as Vogler demonstrates, the neocons and their Likudnik bosses figured out an effective plan B anyway. You are going to love Israel, winner of the 2003 Iraq Oil War by Gary Vogler, available everywhere. Check it out along with our other great books at libertarianinstitute.org/books. Hey, y'all, let me tell you about Robertson Roberts Brokerage, Inc. Nobody trusts the U.S. dollar anymore. Foreign governments are stocking up on gold instead of $100 bills. One, they know they need to, and two, that means you need to too. Interest rates are up, but for some reason, not much for savings accounts. Park your money there and watch Uncle Joe Biden just counterfeit its value away. You can see how the Fed is afraid to raise rates to beat inflation for fear of popping the current bubbles, at least before the election. So more inflation it will continue to be. Gold is your shield against monetary and price inflation, just like it always has been. Now, Tim Fry and the guys over at Robertson Roberts are recommending gold over silver since the world's almost 200 governments are putting their own pressure on the price, which should help everyone else who makes similar calls on their own. Of course, Robertson Roberts can help you with platinum, palladium, and silver, as well as gold. Don't let the Fed and the war party inflate all your savings away. Look up Robertson Roberts at rrbi.co. That's rrbi.co. Okay, so it's, I guess the vice president is the acting president for now until they hold new elections, or how's that work? Because he's still, you're saying, still the president?
It was another. They have a prime minister. They have a kind of a different system. There's not a vice president that automatically assumes power when a president is kicked out. They have a system where sort of the number, it's another senior leader of that party became. So they have an acting president now, who's part of the Conservative Party, and he's been trying to carry out government policies, but there's no. I mean, it's just a big. Nothing will be clear until there's at least this impeachment is settled, and then there's a new election and a new administration comes in. So it's kind of a chaotic situation. But the thing that's been really frightening to a lot of Koreans and people here too, who follow there, is that when Yoon was in jail, he began to appeal to this really extreme right that hasn't really emerged for years in South Korea. I mean, there was during the 1940s, before the Korean War. I mean, one of the things that led up to the Korean War was the takeover of South Korea by the far right, extreme right, fascist right. And they were, they used violence against the left opposition, and there was, lots of, military clashes between the rightist government in South Korea and left-wing forces in South Korea before the North Koreans invaded and crossed the 38th parallel in 1950. From about 1948 to 50, there was basically a civil war inside of South Korea. And of course, this was during the time when the U.S. Ran things with its, the U.S. had a military government in Korea. So anyway, that far right, that fascist right, really emerged after, during the Korean War and afterwards. And then there was a military coup in 1961 where there was a dictator named Park Chung-hee, who was a general who had also been trained in the Japanese military during colonialism. He ruled for 18 years, and that's when this really far right was very much in power, and Park Chung Hee was assassinated, and that and as a result, there was another coup after he was assassinated, and there was another period of authoritarian rule. But as I've talked about on your show before, there was an uprising in 1980 when that general massacred all these people in the city of Gwangju who were demonstrating against martial law, and he took over the country at the time. But that Gwangju uprising was the spark for a democracy movement throughout the country in South Korea in the 80s. And by 87, they had basically forced the military to step aside. And then there were elections, and conservatives won, liberals won in the elections that followed for president. But the far right had really been minimized. They're because they were seen as the problem in the dictatorship period and the authoritarian period. And so, even conservative candidates, had to disassociate themselves from the far right to win elections, to appeal to the middle. And so the far right was really kind of ostracized in a way. But Yoon is sort of that ilk, and he's really appealed to the far right. And by far right, I'm talking about there's this one, fundamentalist preacher who's leading all these people and condemning the opposition as communist and pro North Korean and pro China. And there's a lot of older people that are very, very anti-communist. They're part of that. And then there's lots of young men who are like kind of incels who are and some of them even identify with the MAGA movement in the United States and with Trump, and they kind of together form this far right of today. And they've used violence to support Yoon. And just today I saw something about some foreign reporters that were just covering demonstrations were beat up by these far right people, and then these reporters that were beat up are not left wing or anything. They're they're fairly conservative reporters from this publication called North Korea News that follows events in North Korea. And so it's a really, you have a big splits now between open splits, violent splits between the left and the right there now. And so it's causing like some of yesterday, I think this week, I think Colby, the what's his name? He's Trump's new
Elbridge.
deputy, Eldridge Colby, he's kind of this realist, he has this kind of realist approach to the world.
Yeah, I saw his confirmation hearing. He seemed less worse than a lot of guys.
Well, I've been critical of him in the past, but he does have he he recognizes the reality of the situations, I think, and like he's like he says like we don't have to be 100% enemies with China. We can be like sort of we don't have to be necessarily go to war with them, but we there are enemy, but they're not like the enemy's about to storm the gates. I mean, he's and we should have dialogue with China, right? And like he was saying at his hearing, he mentioned a little bit about he was asked about this trilateral relationship between Japan, the U.S., and South Korea, and he said that probably that may not last because of the political uh, situation within South Korea, because there is a lot of opposition. He recognizes that there's a lot of opposition to it, into this trilateral relationship in South Korea, and he recognizes that as a reality, which is a good thing, I think, because the Biden people just were like, they wouldn't hear of any opposition. It's like, well, too bad. This is the way they have to go.
Yeah.
And the Biden people and Tony Blinken and the guy who was the ambassador to Japan, former mayor of Chicago.
Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah, exactly. They were saying things like, this trilateral relationship has to remain, and this is the foundation of our alliance system, and et cetera, et cetera. And they really scoffed at any kind of opposition, and it's like what we say goes, basically. And so I don't know exactly how Colby's going to operate as far as military policy, but he seems a lot more pragmatic and a lot more
Hey, do you know
willing to
Tim?
recognize the reality.
Yeah, do you know Tim if Stephen Biegun is back? He was the most reasonable guy last time around.
I don't know, because I haven't been following it that closely, but I do know that. I mean, the thing is, like that Trump is talking about. Well, he said something yesterday about the U.S. Japan alliance, the military alliance, saying that we have to defend Japan, but they don't have to defend us, which is actually not even true. But also, he doesn't seem to understand that the U.S. formed this military alliance with Japan in 1952 during the Korean War, and really pressured him into this. But that agreement gave gave the U.S. the right to have bases in Japan, military bases in Japan, basically forever. And those bases, of course, are not just for defending Japan. Those bases were the main bases that the U.S. used in the Korean War to bomb Korea. Those U.S. bases in Japan were critical to the U.S. war in Vietnam. So it's not just protecting Japan; it's like protecting American interests all over the globe, and that's why
that's the trade-off for Europe too. It's you let us keep our military bases in your country, and you can have open access to American markets, and you can keep your tariffs on our stuff.
Exactly. But the thing is about he's also going to impose tariffs apparently on steel and some really important products that come out of Korea and Japan. But like the other day he said, in his speech the other day, he said to the Congress, he said Korea pays, we pay quadruple the tariffs that Korea does. And actually there's no tariff there. I guess he forgot that there was this Korea-U.S. free trade agreement where they cut tariffs for almost everything. But also during the when he was talking with North Korea and was having these negotiations with Kim Jong-un, which of course ended when John Bolton told him not to sign an agreement that would reduce the size of North Korea's military nuclear industry in return for dropping of sanctions. And, Bolton told him that would be a terrible thing and can't do it. And so Trump walked away, but he really walked away from quite a deal, I think. And of course, since then, tensions between North and South Korea and the U.S. have really increased.
Yeah.
And with Japan, of course.
Well,
so a lot of Koreans fear that they will be cut out of any negotiations between Trump and Kim Jong-un if he starts that again. And I think they have a legitimate complaint there. And,
so last time they had essentially a liberal in Moon who wanted to deal, who asked Trump for permission. Hey, can we please deal here? And Trump said, go ahead. So now I guess you're saying, well, we got this right-wing group who they identify themselves with MAGA types, but they don't agree with them on this, I guess. But then it sounds like you're saying, though, that the liberals are going to win the next election and then maybe it'll be all right or not. And real quick, because I'm sorry, I just realized what time it is and I got to go.
No, that's okay. I think the left liberals are going to win. And I think there's all signs point toward that. And they've already said, actually, one of the leading opposition politicians a week ago or so said he thinks Trump should get a Nobel Prize for negotiating with North Korea. So
okay, great.
They want to have negotiations. They support it. So
well, and look, and maybe the right wingers are fond enough of Trump that they're willing to go along if he's the one taking the lead on it. I don't know. I want to see an end of this war, and I'm so regretful that Trump was not able to see this through last time because, of course, W. Bush and Barack Obama would have rather died than to see America make peace with North Korea. And so that tells me that it's probably a really good thing to seek.
And Biden, too.
Biden, too.
No desire to do that.
I remember well how Moon pulled this off was he got Trump on, I think it was a Friday night, and said, hey, come on, let me deal. And Trump thought, my staff is going to hate this, right? McMaster's going to blow his lid, and I want to see that happen. So sure, go ahead, Mr. President, right?
He bucked the Washington establishment.
Yeah. His own White House, which, at that time was occupied territory from the rest of the Washington establishment there, where now I think he's got freedom of action in a way that he didn't before. If he leaves this 4 years without a deal with North Korea, Tim, I'm going to be pissed because he's got every opportunity to do it now, seems like.
He does, and I think actually, ironically, this right wing in Korea does not want to have a negotiated peace with North Korea, not at all.
They'll follow his lead if he pushes, though, I bet.
The left, I don't know if they will or not, but they might. But it would not be as easy in terms of resolving North-South issues. So, it's always been a case in South Korea when progressives are in office, they make much more progress in peace talks with North Korea.
Yeah.
And I think that there's no reason that couldn't happen, in the next 2 to 4 years.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I got to go, dude. I'm so over time. Thank you for coming back on the show. Let's catch up again soon, Tim. Appreciate it, man.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right, you guys. That's a great Tim Shorrock. You can find him on Twitter. He's Timothy S. The Scott Horton Show, Anti-War Radio, can be heard on KPFK 90.7 FM in LA, APSradio.com, antiwar.com, scotthorton.org, and libertarianinstitute.org.